couple of armchair GMs who have yet to be wrong with any of their Timberwolves takes. Right. It's Flagrant Howls with Phil Mackey and Kyle Theige.
On the spot here to start this episode here. And by the way, we should acknowledge we are recording this kind of middle of the day on Friday. We know there is a huge game tonight against the Lakers, so you might be listening to this after the Lakers Timberwolves play. So we're going to keep this more evergreen and topical. Hopefully it carries over because Naz Reid is the big news of the day here today. So if you missed it, Naz Reid wound up he broke his wrist on what was a non-flagrant foul, I will add. There's no reason to review at all. Nothing to see here, right? He played even after it, but he broke his wrist. He's going to be out for a significant amount of time. My question to you is, putting you on the spot here, Kyle, where does Naz Reid breaking his wrist on the eve of this 5-game, 6-game stretch run and play in playoffs, where does this rank among classic Timberwolves follies? Just like a classic Wolves thing. One of your best, most inspirational players is just out for an indefinite period of time going into this huge stretch of games.
It's definitely up there. I wore all black to this podcast today. Naz didn't die, by the way, but like it felt like he died.
Kind of feels like
that tweet last night. I mean, again, there wasn't a ton of reporting after the Wednesday game on Naz, simply because, and maybe we'll get into this, there were other bigger topics being addressed in that locker room, like officiating. So, and Naz said he was okay. I mean, he kept playing. He shot free throws. It was his left hand, obviously, so not his shooting hand. But I've just watched Naz Reid play every game for the Timberwolves, as many listeners have as well. And I've seen, he's made of rubber. I've just always seen him kind of fall down, hold on to something, and then get back up. So it was tough to find out that he actually broke his wrist. In the grand scheme of things, he's going to be fine. It's not a lower body injury. It's not something that like is going to hurt his ability to get paid this summer. And in the rotation, again, I am very much down the path of just coping now. But like, I don't know, if you had to think of someone in the rotation that you could afford to lose. Again, I wish Naz Reid had 6 healthy wrists. But like, if you had to find someone, it's probably like him or Taurean Prince would be like.
You've depth.
You can
obviously.
make it work.
Mike Conley, you're screwed. I get it. Anthony
it
Edwards,
sucks.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Ant, Carl, Jaden, for God's sakes. You can find, if Naz is out, you're gonna be able to just play more Kyle Anderson. It's really, really sad because I've said it on multiple platforms that his development story is the single greatest development story in Timberwolves franchise history. There's not a lot of them, I remember being in a locker room once when he was talking about, someone asked him an undrafted, free agent question about his getting into the league. And he just talked about how much he loves playing basketball. And when you're undrafted, it's kind of like being a walk-on in college. Yeah. Like you're on the team, but like you're also the first one when could get cut. So he loves playing basketball, and he was up against having the ability to do so a couple of years ago. And for him to just get better every day and to become kind of the energy guy, the Bobby Portis of this team, is a bummer. Yeah. But if there's any positive whatsoever, and it's kind of morbid, but like he was balling on like national TV games every night, to the point where like other national pods were like, have you seen this Naz Reid guy? So maybe if nothing else, you put Naz back in the garage. He's not going to be on a playoff, on TV and stuff. Like maybe this will help the Wolves be able to re-sign him this summer, because people just aren't going to think about Naz Reid for a couple months, and maybe that'll lower.
I love your coping mechanisms right now. You're like, it's really not that bad because they have a couple other big men, and maybe now they can get him for like $3 million less per year. Because no, he could still come. Is it possible that he could come back for like the second round of the playoffs if they beat the Kings or whoever they would?
I've tried.
It's his non-shooting arm. He's a tough guy.
I've tried to look this.
Get him one of those clubs that like football players wear. Just put it. Can he just get out there with a giant cast and just thwap guys upside the head?
Naz with one arm is still like the third best dribbler on this team. So yeah, just club him up. But he's going to get.
Who do you trust to catch a pass in the paint more? Naz with a cast on his left arm, or Rudy Gobert with 2 free hands?
Listen, I love Rudy now. I'm a Rudy guy, but I think if if you have Naz had one arm in a sling and his other arm was given to Rudy, I would still trust Naz to catch the ball before Rudy, even if Rudy had 3 arms. So, no, this is a bummer. Naz has done enough. He is going to get paid this summer. How much remains to be seen. Again, like, if you're the Wolves, I talked about this with Dane Moore the other day, like, they can afford to re-sign him, then figure out the tax bill a year from now, whatever, but he's going to get, 440, 448, whatever. But if this injury keeps him in the garage a little bit and allows the Wolves to have a 1% chance better, to re-sign him this summer, then that's the risk I'm willing to take.
Yeah, it's I've
been working on that one.
I see what you did there. Yeah, God,
I'm sorry. It's Friday, and it's like my brain is I'm so nervous about this Lakers game. Like, I know we're gonna not talk about it until next week, but oh my God,
that's okay. I'll give you a break.
Let's go. Let's go.
So I agree with you on the development story. Undrafted, and I remember that first summer league, right? It was the first. He was undrafted, and he just kind of shows up, and who's this guy? Just this Energizer bunny grabbing every rebound and every putback, and then he comes in and he winds up developing a 3-point shot, per 36 minutes this year. So he's averaging a career high. Actually, he actually played more minutes per game 2 years ago. He's only playing 18 minutes a game, but sometimes you'll get like the full Naz experience for 28 or 30 minutes. His per 36 numbers this year are insane for a guy that's a role player, right? 23 points, 10 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 blocks, a steal and a half, shooting league average from 3, and one of the best effective field goal percentages on the team because he's been a 70% free throw shooter. So you got to find a way to keep him. I think I agree with you, though, that like from a value standpoint, this probably doesn't hurt the Timberwolves in the long run if he can, instead of making like $18 million a year because he balled out in the first round of the playoffs or something. But that's the morbid coping path.
Yeah, 100%.
The more realistic path is this definitely damages their chances to win games down the stretch in the regular season. It damages their chances in a playoff series because, for all the fear-mongering about what are you going to do with all these tall players once you get into a small ball situation, well, the Wolves have kind of said, small sample size since Cat came back, 3 games of Cat being on the court, but they've leaned into their size. It's been a helpful thing for them, especially against the Hawks in that first game back and then against the Warriors. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do going forward here. And that's my next question for you, which is, okay, do you stick with trying to play size and replace his minutes with Nate Knight, or let's stick on the big man side because then we can get to the small ball thing. If you're looking to replace Naz with more big man minutes, do you give Nate Knight more playing time, and or do you activate Luka Garza for the regular season down the stretch here, and or, because you can't put 2-way contract guys on playoff rosters, do you give Luka Garza a real actual contract, waive somebody, we could debate who that would be, and make it the Luka Garza show for 20 minutes each night and give him Naz's minutes?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I've just been coping and being really sad and hiding out in the dark these last 12 or 14 hours. I haven't really thought about moving forward. I mean, short-term moving forward, I always have thought that they were going to run into a rotation pinch in the playoffs. I just don't think Finch was going to play 10 guys. So even if Naz had 6 healthy wrists, he might only get 8 minutes in certain playoff matchups. We got to remember, we were a week ago, we're like, is Naz going to get DNPs? And then he just led the team in scoring for 3 games, whatever. I just think as Carl works his way back into shape, you're just going to go back to that Rudy or Carl is always out there type thing.
And small ball.
Yeah, and go back. I mean, again, it does suck because we've spent this last week being excited about size matters and kind of embracing this identity. And, we watched Naz chase Kevin Huerter around screens in that Kings game. That was, when Naz was like, I can actually play power forward, that was a massive thing. Well, now he's out. So you just backfill with more Kyle Anderson minutes, which I think is nice because it gives you, you're going to run into a situation where we've been saying this for a couple weeks, like Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Conley Towns, Rudy Gobert, Kyle Anderson. All 6 of those guys should close games, but you can't. So, and that's not including Naz. So yeah, you just play Kyle with Rudy more, maybe play TP at the 4 when he gets back from this illness alongside Carl. It's a blow, but Nate Knight, no. I think Nate's a good young player and has a chance in this league. Luka Garza, maybe for some of these upcoming games where you're playing, the Blazers, who It's like me and 4 other G League guys, just to get some buckets to keep Carl and Rudy a little fresher. But I think you just got to kind of go with the rest of the guys you really trust. And Finch isn't going to break glass and put an 8-9 in. That's just not a guy he really trusts right now. So same with Garza. Maybe against these bad teams, but not in the playoffs, I don't think.
I'm with you. Unless like, if there's the illness is still running rampant throughout the locker room or something, it's like we have to play Luka Garza and he shows out against the Lakers or somebody. I'm with you on that. I think they fill it with more small ball type minutes. The problem is, like, you say you backfill with more Kyle Anderson minutes. That's the crazy thing. Like, where are they getting all these minutes? So Kyle Anderson, even with the logjam of Naz Reid playing and in the games Cat's been back, Kyle Anderson played 36 minutes in the Hawks game, 32 minutes in the Warriors game, and then Cat sat the Sacramento game and he played 36 minutes again. And then against Phoenix, he played 30 minutes. So it's not like you're going to go from, 25 minutes of Kyle Anderson, let's turn that into 34 minutes. You're already playing Kyle Anderson like 30 to 35 minutes. So it's probably going to fall on, Taurean Prince is going to get, instead of 24 minutes, might get 28, 29 minutes. Okay, I know this isn't going to happen, but I would be curious to see Josh Minott get 5 minutes here and there. I just want to see Energizer Bunny. It's probably not going to happen, is it?
You're preaching to the choir. I don't know exactly how much snow you have on the ground out there, but if there's any space for grass, I think it's time to actually start the lawnmower up. But it's tough. And to back to Garza, like, Naz was getting these minutes despite everyone being like, there's no way he's going to play once Carl comes back, myself included, because Naz showed you he could play a different position. He could be a power forward and make Carl and Rudy, comfortable in their natural center position. Luka Garza is just a center. He's not going to chase guys around screen stuff. He's a really good player, maybe one of the best G League players of all time. But that's why it's just, they played 8.5 guys essentially against the Suns the other day because Nikhil played 5 minutes. And now you're just probably going to play 7.5 guys and just move the minutes around. But I'm with you. Depending on what happens against the Lakers, I mean, I really, really think like that Blazers game on Sunday is an exhibition. Even for a franchise like the Wolves, who take all these games not seriously, I would love to just can we get Josh Minott 5 minutes in a semi-meaningful game just to see if he's like an emergency option? Because Naz was your backup Carl, backup Rudy. If Carl goes out for a game in the playoffs, if they make it that far, Rudy, then what? Then what are your options, right? So just having another guy that can protect the rim, guard the perimeter. Josh Minott's raw as hell, but he just gives you stuff that Naz kind of gave you, and the number one thing is energy. And I love energy guys. So
sometimes that's the thing. And I'm not suggesting that he's like the solution that's going to carry you, and I agree with you. If you were, let's say you were to lean on more Luka minutes, obviously you could never put Luka and Gobert on the court early at the same time. So you'd have to be like Cat moving to the 4 and Luka Garza playing the 5. Like you'd have to shuffle it differently than you would with Naz Reid. But I think you and I are on the same page in that you just kind of, all right, well, Jaden and Kyle and Taurean, you guys are just gonna, and maybe if the minutes kind of trickle around, like maybe Anthony Edwards is gonna play 2 extra minutes in certain situations when you need the offensive boost. Because that's the other thing too. You could, if Cat's on the bench, and there's very few times where Cat and Ant are both on the bench, but if they're both on the bench, okay, who's the third scorer? Naz Reid is capable of just carrying the offense for 5 minutes in the third quarter, fourth quarter, right?
Oh, and the beauty of what Naz did over this last week is hey, Carl has come back. He's hit 2 game winners, but he's not himself. Ant hasn't really been himself since he either sprained his ankle and or got sick. And that, I don't know, man, the diarrhea in the desert that went through everyone these last couple of days has been tough. But you just need your best players to perform. I mean, Naz was a great Band-Aid over this last week, giving them a bunch of points, helping them win important games. But listen, man, you're going to win the playoff series because Ant's a superstar or an all-star, right? You're going to win it because Carl's an all-NBA guy. It's nice to have good bench players, but Naz did his job. We salute Naz. We hope he rests that wrist. He's going to get paid. But now you just got to kind of turn inwards and be like, again, who else can we rely on? And I think you said it really well. Ant, you got to play 2 more minutes, and you got to score 6 more points. Jaden, you got to play every minute you can without falling out, and you got to give us more of those 15-point games and not the 6-point games like against Phoenix.
Yeah. Okay, I think it's time. It's been several months since we've done this, and I think I'm gonna turn this podcast in a sharp, different direction here. It's been, I think, 4 months since our last Timberwolves Leadership Power Rankings.
Ooh.
And we had a great discussion on Mackey and Judd earlier this week about the Mike Conley impact and how it just kind of feels like very rarely do you look and say Mike Conley was the reason why in the box score or whatever that they won a game, right? Like D'Angelo Russell, there's a bunch of games, the Clippers playing game last year, he'd say, boy, he just kind of took over offensively in the fourth quarter, and that's one of the benefits of D'Angelo Russell. I think Mike Conley has added some incredible hidden value behind the scenes on the court to this team. And Judd brought up a good point that I want to bring up to you here, which is if Kyle Anderson, and maybe Taurean Prince too, but let's say Kyle Anderson was kind of the de facto leader from like December, January into February, and then you wind up making the trade for Mike Conley. It's one thing when you have Kyle Anderson preaching things on the court behind the scenes. It's another thing when you bring in Mike Conley and now they're both preaching the same things, which is stop being selfish, give yourself up for the team. Here's what you need to do on the road, sleep, nutrition, everything, right? And here's the way we need to play as a team. It feels like another adult in the room has been a huge reason why this team has gone from being kind of a soft, shoulder shrug team to being one of the more hard-nosed, tough beats in the NBA the last couple weeks. And that Suns game, I know they lost it, and the officiating was, I think, a huge black eye on the league. It was just a terribly officiated game, and that's coming from the guy here who hates being the rip on officiating guy. But despite all of that and not making shots, they were just like right in that game at the end with a chance to win it, right? And I just don't know that the Timberwolves are that mentally tough 4 months ago, 3 months ago. So I guess we'll get to our leadership power rankings, but the fact that you have more adults in the room that are taking over the culture of this team has been a huge reason why the identity has sort of shifted the way that it has, I think.
This is kind of a random stat, but my favorite stat over these last 3 games, Warriors, Kings, and now Suns. Obviously the Wolves went 2-1. The largest deficit that they faced in those 3 games was 8 points. The Suns had an 8-point lead at some point. I think they won by 7, but I know it's a random stat, but to me that shows you that like they're just never out of it, and it just backs up everything you just said. Like they just have a bunch of adults and maturity that now they take every possession seriously. In 2023, with the way teams shoot the ball, I know it's 3 games, but that's kind of crazy that like a team didn't just go on a 12-0 run and like you're down 12 in the second quarter, right? Like first half leads don't really mean much, but I think again it has no shade on D'Lo. I think Conley just fits this all better. I mean, D'Lo's been playing great. He's been like a plus-minus star for the Lakers when he plays, but Mike Conley just makes every possession important, and it's odd, but just kind of picking these random tea leaves. I talked about how he was on Ryan Russillo's podcast, and he had this quote about how at this point, no matter what you do in a statistical category, it's not going to change your averages. We're too deep into the numbers now where it's like you go drop 40, you're still going to average the same amount of points. Chris Finch said that same exact thing the night that he had his 100th win right before the game ball. He's like, hey, nothing we do individually will matter now. It's all about the team. So I'm very, very much with you. I'm glad we're doing this update because I have someone I want to include that I don't think you might have thought of, but this is just a really, really well-run basketball team over this last week. I understand it could all fall out tonight or next week, but we get to see a really mature basketball team for a week, and that's really cool because I love basketball and I love, efficiency and making plays and, closing games down the stretch with defense. And as sad as that Suns loss was, I mean, that Kings win and those Warriors wins were really, really cool, and I just don't think it happens without Mike.
It almost just, it feels like you got Conley and Kyle Anderson who've kind of banded together now with 130 combined playoff games under their belt, right?
Yep.
And Rudy also has 50, 60, whatever, a ton of playoff games too. But Rudy's he's a little bit more aloof. I don't think he's the greatest communicator always, and I don't know that he's looked at as the leader, right? I think even Mike Conley kind of said, yeah, Rudy will say things and his tone can be off, and you just have to kind of learn how to communicate with Rudy, the way that he goes about business. But when you've got Kyle Anderson and Mike Conley with 130 career postseason games under their belts, playing in Western Conference Finals with the San Antonio Spurs, if you're Kyle Anderson, and Mike Conley going through all those wars in the first, second. I think he might have gone to 1 conference finals, but that matters, man. When those guys speak, and this is all due respect, like D'Lo, good solid player, 0 postseason credibility at all whatsoever. in the limited games he's played, outside of the Clippers play-in game, which that was nice. Nice job. But in the actual playoff games, his performance drops off a cliff, and his teams have gotten beat in both series, right? So just swapping that out and bringing, you're swapping a guy out that was actively mocking Rudy Gobert to his teammates, right? And you're bringing in a guy that is preaching togetherness and team and has, 70 career playoff games under his belt. What a crazy shift in culture that you just injected into this team, with a third of the season left.
We just need to stop this thinking where if you like one thing, that it means that you hate the other, right? Like, you and I have been the loudest voices on this. It's just, they just fit better with Mike Conley. If tonight before the game, I was like, hey, Phil, do you want to go get pizza or tacos? And you're like, tacos. I shouldn't freak out and be like, what do you have against Italians? Like, why don't you like pizza? You know what I mean? It's just like, you just wanted tacos. The Wolves just wanted Mike Conley, and it fits better for them. D'Angelo Russell has fit really well for the Lakers. So it's a win-win, but yeah, to your point, it's just really nice for what the rest of the ingredients are on this. A young Ant, a young Jaden, a still young Carl, even Rudy Gobert might be emotionally younger, to just have two dudes that are very much in your rotation, Kyle and Mike, that are an extension of the coaching staff, have been there before. I mean, Kyle Anderson has played before Minnesota, like two of the smartest franchises in the world, like the Spurs and the Grizzlies, who are a really good franchise. So they get it. And it kind of does. It trickles down to all the other guys. We're not going to talk about officiating, I know, but despite the officiating these last couple of weeks, I do think the Wolves have been really mature in how they've handled a lot more of these situations. Obviously, Rudy goes off nuclear after the Suns game, but in the game, I thought they've done a pretty good job of managing emotions, and that's, again, because of their leadership.
Yeah. So give me your rankings.
Well,
give me your top five Timberwolves leadership power rankings.
Okay, top five in no specific order from 2 through 5, but I believe this is Kyle Anderson's team right now. He would be number one. I said this to Dane, but he reminds me now of like a dad at a birthday party who's playing all-time quarterback. Like, he is just telling all the little kids where to go. Like, Ant, you go over here. Jaden, you go over here. Like, inbounds, whatever. He's pretty vocal on the court and demonstrative sometimes, but they respect it and they love it. So I think Kyle Anderson would be number one. Mike Conley probably number two.
Yeah.
And then Rudy Gobert's in here. I actually kind of loved Rudy going nuclear. Again, I don't want to talk about officiating, but
let's talk about it. We can talk about it.
I thought his comments, I mean, he called the league corrupt, which is
it was aggressive. He literally said they have ways of doing it, right? They have ways they can rig games, is what he was insinuating, and said, of course they want to see LeBron and Steph. Now, he did mention the Kings in that sentence, too, at one point. It's like, I don't know, the league hasn't been colluding and conspiring to get the Kings back in the playoffs since, first time since 2006. But, yeah, it was aggressive.
I think it was a proper message coming from him, though, because he's also the guy that you and I have pointed out multiple times is on the receiving end of just, like, a lot of cheap shots. I mean, I don't know, like, every time Draymond Green was breathed on, they reviewed it for a flagrant in that Warriors game.
Yeah.
But then Rudy got, like, he gets hit in the face all the time. I don't really get it. So I think it was cool that he was the one that said it. I mean, that second half of the Suns game, I was texting someone who does stats for the league. He works for the Wolves, but he was like, it reminded me of if an umpire just changed the strike zone in the seventh inning. Like, that's a really good comp for the second half whistle was just different. I think they were fed up with it. So back to the rankings, Rudy's in there. We never really had this guy in the top 5 of our leadership power rankings, and we've been critical of him. I've never loved Chris Finch more than I did after the Suns game. Because I thought...
Okay, we're putting Chris Finch in the leadership power ranking.
I thought... I've been saying for weeks now, months, that he needs to just get tossed in a game. Like, he should have gotten tossed in the Suns game. I've come to learn now that's just not his style, and maybe I'm wrong. Like, maybe that's not the way to do it. His post-game quotes, I know, like, Chris Hine was there, John Krasinski was there. He answered every question with basketball stuff to make you smarter, and then beautifully pivoted into being the pettiest person in the room and taking shots at the league. And as a petty person myself, like, I love that. So I thought he stood up for his team. Maybe not in the game when you would have wanted him to throw a chair or something, but he was really, really stood up for his guys. And he basically said, like, we played our asses off and we deserved to win that game. But the free throw disparity was incredible. Devin Booker took more free throws than our whole team. Rudy gets punched in the face. Like, these guys are getting knocked all over the place. Naz Reid breaks his wrist. Like, it's just not an equal whistle. And the leadership part of it is he knew who his next opponent was.
Yeah.
The Lakers.
Yeah.
And he knows, I got to get this message out there now so that tonight it's going to be under a bigger microscope. Maybe it'll win them 2 more free throws, right? But you got Austin Reeves and LeBron James coming to town, and those guys get a historic whistle. So Chris Finch is in my top 5, and then I think I still round it out with, like, I just think Taurean Prince, what he means to this team when he's healthy, he's in there too. So it's no shade on Carl. It's not no shade on the young guys like Ant and Jaden. My leadership power rankings are dominated by guys near their 30s or well into their 40s and 50s, however old Finchie is.
Yeah, I think early 50s. I think he's like 52, 53.
Looks like he's like 38. Good for him.
Looks pretty good.
Those West Coast trips, it seems like his hair gets fuller and fuller every time he comes back from the West Coast.
Yeah. He was a couple weeks ago when they were in Los Angeles. He did an in-studio appearance on The Herd with Colin Cowherd. He was on Fox Sports 1 and everything. Interesting.
Finchie was looking good. Shout out to Finchie.
I think you're right. I'm going Kyle Anderson, Mike Conley in order. Kyle Anderson is the unquestioned leader of this team right now.
Correct.
Number 2 is Mike Conley. Number 3 is Taurean Prince. I think they all love and respect just how hard Taurean Prince plays and how versatile he is. After that, you can kind of throw, and I didn't include coaches in here, but yeah, like, okay, let's put Chris Finch in the 5. And then I think Anthony Edwards, man.
Okay. Yeah.
I think he's in the 5.
Yeah.
I think his teammates respect him. I think they respect that he plays through injuries. He grinds. If you watch that dude play defense now, there's some times early in the season where maybe he's a little bit bored or something, but he is engaged on defense much more than he's ever been in his career. So a leader by example. He's more vocal now than he was when he was a rookie. So, but you're in good hands now because 6 months ago it was, what do you do with Patrick Beverley being gone now? Yeah. And Jared Vanderbilt wasn't necessarily a vocal leader, but just the things he did diving for loose balls and whatnot. Now that it's emerged with Kyle Anderson, Mike Conley, Taurean Prince, that's a pretty good trio of guys that combines to play, 80 minutes a night, 90 minutes a night. So credibility.
And it sucks because I don't think he qualifies for the list anymore because he can't play. But a sneaky submission into the top 5 would have been like a Naz Reid. Because, again, I think his competitiveness level, his ability, again, I just think in sports, if you play through injuries, you get respect from your teammates. And he's always done that. Naz Reid, to me, kind of reminds me of, if you've seen the movie Friday Night Lights, at halftime when that one, I think he's like the defensive end, he just starts screaming, like, what's wrong with y'all? Like, that's Naz Reid. I could see him just in the locker room one game, if they're down 12 to a bad team, like losing his shit and just be like, let's go, let's pick it up. So he can't be in the top 5 anymore, but he would have been another leader. But I guess what
Austin Rivers was number 1 at one point on our list, by the way.
I know, and then he dropped a podcast. Usually that brings down your scores. So he just can't play. I mean, I think he's still a good teammate. It's just we've always said you can't really lead if you don't play.
It's tough unless you're what's his name, Udonis Haslem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, unless you're like Haslam or something, and even Beverly too. I mean, Patrick Beverly really brought another level to the Bulls, but that's because he was also playing big minutes alongside their guards. So, if nothing else, it's cool that we did the leadership power rankings all season because they have changed a lot. But it's also it's the deepest, right, it's ever been at the top of these power rankings. Yeah. You're going into the last 5 games, the last stretch of basketball, hopefully some postseason play, with the most leadership this franchise has ever had, or in 20 years. So that should be something to feel good about and, should help when you lose a good rotation player like Naz. You can rely on, okay, I bet you Taurean Prince knows he has to hit a couple more threes now to make up for, like, you got guys like, I got to step in for Naz because we lost a soldier. So good stuff. But yeah, Finch in top 5.
Yeah, so there you go. Those are the updated leadership power rankings. I think Jay McDaniels, if you just went like on-court leaders, I think just the way that he goes about his defensive assignment every night, kind of a quiet, stoic leader by example. But one thing I found funny about Jaden McDaniels' performance against the Suns, he was largely guarding Kevin Durant, or at least for chunks of that game. And the narrative coming out of the game was Kevin Durant, a little rusty, right? And yeah, of course, like, you're going to be rusty when you've been on the sidelines and you're playing with a relatively new team. He's only played like a few games with the Suns, but boy, 5 for 18, man. Kevin Durant really have to knock the rust off. You know what keeps you rusty? Jaden McDaniels following you around for about half your minutes in that game, but still gets very little credit. He's nowhere near a household name, and I think even like a lot of the national commentators are still just sort of like, oh, who's this guy? Oh,
Yep.
oh, look, this random Jaden McDaniels guy. Nice play defensively, right?
That was some basketball like porn sicko stuff, because you wouldn't have seen, like, I don't think Jaden had 7 blocks. He didn't have a steal or a block in that game. This is next level. He made Kevin Durant's life so miserable. Even at one point, Kevin Durant, like, it was caught during the game, like Monty Williams was telling him to keep his head up, because I think at that point Kevin Durant was 1 for 8 from the field. Like, Jaden, they're the best players in the league, cannot be stopped. That is what kind of makes the NBA so cool. And Kevin Durant is one of the best players now and of all time. But what you can do is slow him down. And Jaden McDaniels slowed that man. He contested every shot. He was so physical. It was just really impressive to watch. And they need him to play now as many minutes as possible with these next couple games, because he has to, when you lose a guy like Naz, who was not the best defender by any means, but was just doing other stuff, being in passing lanes and stuff, you just need Jaden to really lock that one guy down so your other 4 guys can kind of focus on a team defense concept.
Yep. So I think we should shut up now, because we're running this up against the Lakers-Wolves game, so we'll get this podcast out. And then I think you and I'll let's let a couple more games go by here. Then you and I can reconvene like Monday for a weekend recap. But thank you to everyone who has supported Flagrant Howls. This is our first year doing this podcast. Score North, anything that you can support under the Score North umbrella, we appreciate. But we will start doing post-game recaps once the playoffs or the play-in hits. So we will, and Judd will be involved, maybe Declan, but you and I will kind of figure out that flow. But we will, for people asking, we will definitely be hitting you with post-game, maybe even vent line. Maybe we bring fans into the show with us.
Wolves wine line. You can spell that however you want, with like if Pinot Noir or just complaining.
WINE sounds like the right spelling for what's going to happen for me post-game.
I tweeted this out the other day, but I want to say one more time, like, it has been so cool to see how fast this has grown. Like, I know top 65 basketball podcast doesn't seem like a lot, but when you go look at the list of who else is on there, a lot of longtime pods. So everyone that listens to this and supports this and tweets at us, really, really, really appreciate you. And if you listen on Friday or you listen on Saturday, you never listen, go to Target Center tonight. That place is going to be, I know Phil might be making an appearance. Oh, yeah. That place is going to be as electric, if not more electric, than that playing game, because not only the stakes, but it's the Lakers, it's D'Angelo Russell, it's Malik Beasley, it's Jared Vanderbilt, it's LeBron James. So thanks again to everyone, but I can't wait. I'm so nervous. I'm going to go to the bathroom now.
Let's go. LFG. Please give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on Apple Podcasts, and a subscribe button click and a like button click on the YouTube channel to help spread the word about your favorite Timberwolves lifestyle podcast, Flagrant Howls.